I'm going to do a classic streamer pattern today. This is the Matuka. Now, there's an interesting history behind this fly, and I'm not going to go into it that much. It is a New Zealand fly. If you want to know more history on this, head over to a YouTube channel called Savage Flies. A gentleman by the name of Mark O'Neill did a Matuka a while back, and he's got a lot of interesting history there. And that's why I'm not going to do it, because he's got a nice video and put in some effort there to look up the history of this, which is kind of interesting. This is a silver and black or white and black Matuka. It's a great streamer fly for warm water species here in the Midwest. It's also a very good trout fly. It's got interesting tying techniques, and there's lots of other videos out there on tying the Matukas, so I suggest you look those up as well if you want to tie some of these. And I'll get started. So I'm going to start the Matuka by placing my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad R75. The older number was a 79-580 and a size 6. The 5X long streamer hook. I've seen Matukas tied on 3 and 4X long streamer hooks. You know, it's up to you. You could tie this on a 33-66 if you wanted to. I kind of like the longer bodied streamer hooks just a little bit. Now, I'm going to debarb the hook, but before I start attaching my thread, I'm going to add some lead wraps to this. I'm using a 0.020 lead wire. I'm going to put in about 16 or 17 wraps. We're going to have kind of a thicker body portion up here, and I like to put in a little bit of lead so that this gets down a little bit further. Now, if you liked yours to just swim under the water, say 6 inches or less under the water, depending on the current, then don't put any lead on it. So I've got 16 wraps right there. I'll smooth this off. And then I'm going to jam all those together, and I'm going to keep them just forward of the halfway point. Not up to the eye of the hook, but just forward a little bit. For thread, I'm using a Danville 6/0 in white, and that's simply because we're going to have a white body. I don't want to darken that up. If you want to tie your Matuka in something else, you could certainly, like an olive or something, just use an olive thread. It's up to you. I'm going to attach my thread right behind, about an eye length behind the eye of the hook, moving up to that lead. When I get to the lead, I'm just going to loosen up my wraps so that I can get to the back end of those lead wraps. Then I'm going to build up a thread dam. Thread dam does two things for me. It will wedge all that lead in place so it won't slide around on the hook shank underneath the fly or anything, and it also gives me a transition from that larger diameter lead wraps to the narrower diameter hook shank. Then when I'm wrapping in materials, I won't have a ledge where the material may kind of sit on halfway and then just drop off. And granted, in this case, it's a dubbed body, so it probably wouldn't, but it just makes it a little bit smoother, a little bit easier. And I'm going to get my thread all the way back down to the end of the shank. This is where I'm going to tie in the wire. For this Matuka, I'm using this is just a Wapsi medium silver wire. I'm going to tie that in so the end of that is about up to those lead wraps. Just going to wrap that down in to secure it. I'm going to bring my thread back down to the very end here. Now the lead is, or excuse me, the rib is basically what's going to hold in the actual hackle on this. So now I'm ready to dub the body. For the body on this, I'm using a Senyo's laser dub by Hairline. It gives it a nice tight body, a little bit of bulk to it, and has just a little bit of flash to it. Not even really flash, just kind of sparkle, presence maybe, I don't know. I got some red. Yeah, I got some red mixed in that right there. So I'm going to make a fairly long noodle, 3 or 4 inches. I want it tapered. I want it narrowed down here in the back. And then it's going to get thicker as I get up towards the end here. And this will get me about 3/4 of the way down. But I can add a little bit more to different areas to widen that, make that a little bit thicker. This is just going to give me a nice tapered minnow body platform. And I still have something red. I wonder if that might be just picking up from the red hackles here. I'm going to go ahead and go with it, but it does kind of look like I have something red in there. So I'm just applying this. Well, what do you know? I think I do. Don't look like it when I look at my hand. But boy, it's kind of picking up some reddish color there. So that gets me about 3/4 of the way. I can add some more. Yeah, you know what? There's something red in there. I can't believe this. Okay. I'm going to go back here real quick, and I won't make you suffer through the whole video or whole process of me doing this, but I'm going to go back here and get this dubbing off of here because I definitely have something red in there. Okay, I'm going to reapply my dubbing noodle here. And I did find out that there was some red in it. I think I discovered where the red was coming from. I still have a little bit in there. Let me get this body finished and I'll show you. I'm going to put in a little throat on this Matuka. Not all Matukas have them, but I like a little red throat in this. Now I picked the colors and everything that I should say the style for this Matuka fly because it's very similar to the silver and black zonker, which is a very productive fly around here for smallmouth. So that's why I'm going with these colors. And I'm going to put a red throat of Schlappen in here. And I have chosen this feather here, and I peeled these off. What I think has happened is the dye on the feather has gotten on my fingers because I think there's just a little bit there. Tried to wash it off and everything, but I think that's what was coming off and giving just a little bit of a red hue. So that happens. Keep in mind, there's some of these materials that are going to do that. They're going to, the dye is going to kind of bleed onto your hands a little bit. Now, this is where I'm going to tie in the wing. The wing on this is, I'm using black hackles. This is a whiting American cape, rooster cape. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, rooster saddle. That's what it is, a rooster saddle. and I'm going to select 2 feathers for each side. Now you could do just 2 alone if you want. I find that to be kind of sparse. So I've got 2 feathers here. I'm going to select another 2 feathers. I want to make certain that the tips of those feathers are fairly identical. They don't have to be perfect, but I do want them to be fairly identical. In other words, I don't want a couple on one side to be skinny on the tips and the others to be nice and rounded on the tips. There we go. Those 2 will work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up one side. This is the dull side here, and I'm going to put these dull side to dull side so they flatten out. Take your time with this. You want to make certain you're getting all of those rachii, stems all kind of lined up. Now, I don't need this portion of the feather, so I'm actually just going to cut a lot of that out. Peel some of these off. We still have some more prep work here to do. I've got to determine the actual length for my wing, and then I have to strip the barbs off the lower side, the length of the body. So this wing, I want this portion of the wing to stick out from behind here, behind the body, about the length of the hook. So that means that's going to go in right about there, and that means right here is going to be my tie-in spot. So I'll hold that real tight in my left hand. I'll peel off these barbs just to expose this little tie-in spot. Trust me, if you don't have everything peeled just perfect, this fly's got a lot going on. And if there's a few extra barbs up there, that's fine. That's still a little bit long for me. So I'm going to peel a few more off. I'm going to hold that right up there, and that's about the length that I want. So now I have to see where the end of the body is going to be right up on that feather. I need to peel this off just the one side. You're better off peeling this off slowly and creeping up on the right length than trying to take a bunch off. See, I'm almost there. Because if you take off too much, then you've taken off too much. Now do be careful. I just had one of my feathers flip on me. Actually, I think I had 2 of them flip on me. Yes. As you can see, one or the other, but 2 of them together flipped on me as I was working this. So just take your time with it. Align those back up. Sometimes happens. Make certain your tips are aligned, and since we already established our tie-in point, we want to make certain that that is aligned. And I got just a little bit more. Just a few. There we go. So I think that's going to get it. Yep. So I'm going to tie this in up here. I'm leaving those stems long for 2 reasons. One, I can tie that back, and I can use these as a little bit of a handle to move that around to make certain it's lined up right. I'm just going to leave those in for a second. The wire back here, we're going to place 1 wrap around, and then bringing the feather down, I'm going to stroke these barbs back, forward, opening up those stems right above that wire. You need to get your bodkin out and just open that up. And we'll get one wrap right there, and that's going to hold that down to the hook shank. Now, sometimes wetting these is going to help a little bit. I want to pull that so that it's nice and tight along the back. And I'm going to separate these barbs along the back as I wind that wire forward. I'm going to get 4, maybe 5 wraps in here as you apply the wire. You want to make certain that you're getting, take your time with it. You want to make certain you're getting all these barbs divided so you're not, because you don't want to get any of them that are kind of squished flat going in odd directions. Practice makes perfect on this. You're going to get better and better the more of these you do. Having quality hackles also makes a big difference. And then we're going to come up here and tie this off. I can then break away the wire. I can trim away the excess here. And now I can move this around a little bit and scooch this all around. I think I've got one wrap. Unfortunately, it's binding the base of these hackle fibers down. Ideally, when you're done tying this fly, all of those barbs right here will kind of all come back together and almost look like a wing. Now, this is a Rooster saddle hackle. It's not like a webby, what am I thinking of, Schlappen or something like that. So I doubt it's going to come together that well. And then somewhere in there, I think my tails, no, I guess they're okay. All right. Now I'm going to bring my thread forward and I'm going to change over to my black thread. This is just a Danville 6/0 in black. And that is just to tie in the throat and the hackle, because there is a hackle collar on this. Sometimes using a strong Rooster hackle or something like that that's got a little bit more barbs to it works out a little bit better. So for the throat, I'm actually, when I peeled off these barbs here, I left some of these webbier ends right here. That's a term, because I like those to flow a little bit more. I'm going to tie that in. I want the throat about half the length of the body. I'm going to secure that in, trim away the excess, and then I've got a hackle to put in. We're going to have a hackle collar on our Matuka. I have selected another black Rooster saddle hackle here. This one, I'm going to get 5 or 6 wraps in here of this, but I want the resulting end barbs to be maybe from the head to the point of the hook. I'm going to grab that by the tip, stroking those fibers back. I'm going to trim that, give myself a little anchor. Securing that in, bring my thread down to the eye of the hook. And I will use my Hackle pliers to wrap this in. And like I said, you're going to get 5 or 6 wraps here. Just want to put a nice pronounced collar on this. As we work our way down to the eye of the hook. There's 4. I get 1 more in here. There's 5. And now I'll tie that off. I'm going to sweep all of this back. And then get my thread right down behind the eye of the hook. I'm going to start wrapping backwards to make the head of the fly, and this is also going to wedge those barbs in a rearward direction. You take this stem here. Generally, you can just break that off. Don't want to make the head too big on this. I'll flatten my thread. And I'll put in a whip finish. Trim away my thread. I'll add some head cement. That will soak down in there, and that will complete our Matuka. Now I do have a tail feather here that somehow shortened up on me. A couple of them, because see both of those are a little shorter on one side. Got to be careful when you start yanking on all those barbs to pull them off. That can happen. But you know, when this is swimming in the water like this and this is flowing back here, fish aren't going to know the difference. So there you have it. That is the Matuka. It's a great streamer. It's a good warm water fly, obviously a good trout fly, and an interesting fly to tie. Thanks for watching today.
Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.